Hey everyone, it's fucking freezing here right now. So in preparation for my top 100 video releasing sometime before Elden Ring comes out, it's technically like a top 94 or something, but I'm not going to call it that. I've been in the process of reading a lot of manga that I had not read in a very long time, mostly to just refresh myself on all the things that happen in them and, see if my opinions on them have changed over the years. I recently did this with Bakuman, which, And after that whole debacle, I was really interested in checking out some more stuff to see if I had any drastic opinion shifts like that one. Thankfully, I didn't. So instead of making an individual video on each series, I figured, hey, why don't we just compile all of these into one nice video? Give you a brief rundown of all of these series and some updated thoughts I have on them. They might not be all that much different from my original reviews, but those videos are pretty old and stinky and I don't like to go back to them. So yeah, new year, new me, all that fun stuff. All You Need Is Kill. This is an adaptation of a light novel by Takeshi Obata. Yes, that's right, he's back already. Thankfully, though, Oba is not here to drag him down this time. The story follows Keiji, a young soldier who is enlisted in the military to help Japan fight off these alien creatures known as mimics. These gross germ-looking things who show up, cause a bunch of damage, and move on. And they've been completely decimating humanity. So at this point, people are getting pretty desperate on figuring out how to defeat them. Now, Keiji, being inexperienced and lame, instantly dies on the battlefield when they engage the mimics, but he finds himself stuck in a time loop, and that's what this story's about. It's very short, it's only 2 volumes long, and it's just basically about Keiji reliving the same day over and over again, becoming better, learning how to fight the mimics, trying to figure out their secrets. Eventually he learns that another skilled soldier, Rita, has been stuck in the same time loop as him before, so he tries to get to know her, to learn what she knows, and they work together to both kill the mimics and figure out what their deal is. Now, this was my first full series review ever. God damn. Things have changed quite a bit since then. But, like back then, I still enjoyed this. Not as much, but I did think that this was a fun, decent time. Of course, the concept of a time loop has been done multiple times before, but I feel like this was a really unique and creative twist on it. I liked how we get to see the details of how Keiji spends these days, what he's been doing. It is pretty action-packed, and Obata's art is just fantastic as always. I did think, there was a bit of unnecessary fan service moments, and, there was a bit of like edgelord stuff for the sake of being edgy that I don't really care about in this day and age. But it was a decent fun time, and I did like how it all wrapped up in the end. Manga adaptations of light novels are usually, fucking horrible, but in this case, I thought it was decent. I've always gone back and forth on whether I prefer this or the movie. Right now, I'm kind of leaning towards the movie. I think it's a great fun time. They're making a show about it, apparently. Originally I gave this series a 9. I'll probably drop it down to a 7. It's a good, decent time. Not something I would recommend you go out read immediately, but check it out. Orange by Ichigo Taniko. This is another time fucky series, and it follows a high school girl named Naho, who one day receives a letter in the mail dated 10 years into the future from herself. These letters describe in detail the events of the next year, and how it pertains to a new transfer student in their class, Kakeru, who is going to die in a year if Naho and her friends don't, befriend him, and, make his life happy. Because they don't want him to die. That would suck. And yeah, this is a pretty wholesome one. It's essentially just a slice of life with Naho and her friends all hanging out all the time. They're, looking out for Kakeru, making sure everything's going well. The characters are all very likable, especially Kakeru, which made me very invested in the story and hoping that they succeed in saving him. It's got some romance elements, of course, as Naho develops a pretty big crush on him. And there's, all this, teen high school drama shit in there as well. And it has this nice little sci-fi twist of course, them knowing the future, trying to prevent things. Things don't always go as they expect. Some timeline messiness happens. And yeah, I absolutely loved this series when I first reviewed it, and I still did have a really good time. However, there were definitely some problems I had with it upon reread. I think Naho, while she's a likable character, is also kind of smooth-brained. When she receives this letter in the mail from herself, I kind of expected her to obviously just read the whole thing after, you know, she realized it was the real deal, but she doesn't. She just reads it a day at a time and doesn't look ahead to avoid being confused, which is really fucking dumb. Eventually, she does read ahead the whole thing, but it takes way too long. So, like, when you find out she's doing this, it's a bit frustrating. I also don't really understand how future Naho could have possibly written this letter, which is a very detailed breakdown of every single day of this year. Like, there is literally no way anyone could remember all of that, unless of course she kept her own journal at the time, which I don't believe we had gotten any hints towards. And I mean, a good chunk of this story does take place in the future with the future versions of these characters, but yeah, nothing still really indicates how Naho is able to write these letters. I also had a problem with how they actually went about sending the letters back in time. I thought the explanation for that was really silly, and I think it would have been a lot more impactful if they just didn't explain it. So yeah, I did have some minor gripes like that. However, overall, I did think this was a pretty wholesome and satisfying series, and at only 5 volumes, I would still definitely recommend it. Would I give it a 10 like I did back then? Well, no. We'll drop down to an 8, call it a day. It was a good time. Planetes by Makoto Yukimura. This is a science fiction series set in the not-too-distant future, which follows Hachimaki, an astronaut who is part of a crew in charge of collecting space debris. You know, just space junk. Ship blows up in space, things collide, creates a bunch of space junk. Gotta clean it up because, you know, it can cause some, you know, catastrophic problems. The story follows Hachimaki and his crew as they face challenges up in space and how they continue to follow their dreams. Hachimaki, of course, really wanting to join this years-long space mission to the planet Jupiter and eventually be a pimp and own his own spaceship or something. Right off the bat, what I absolutely love about this series is that despite it being science fiction taking place in the 2070s and 80s, it is one of the most realistic depictions of the future I think I have ever seen. And you might think that makes no sense, but what I mean by that is that when you logically look at where we are right now, thinking 60 years ahead, about 80 years at the time Yukimura wrote this, it does feel like a pretty logical leap in technology and space travel. A lot of attention is also paid to the politics of this world, reactions people in certain groups have to these extensive developments in space travel, and I really just love the whole premise, the attention to detail about the space junk, because this is a real problem that is often never explored in stories like this. And the threat of the hypothetical Kessler syndrome, which is the idea that eventually there might be so much space junk in Earth's orbit that it becomes almost impossible to breach our atmosphere, which is a scary thought, and the series does a good job addressing this. But what the series is mostly about is a character study on this guy Hachimaki. He starts off with a very concrete goal in life. He's a very cold and calculating person, but once he meets Tanabe, a girl who starts to open his eyes on the nature of things a little bit more, we get to see a whole lot of this character's mind. We delve deep into the psychology of this character, learning about his anxieties, his worries, his hopes, and honestly, it's fucking brilliant. Yukimura is, of course, famous for Vinland Saga, rightfully so, but I do think Planetes as a complete package is just as good, if not maybe even a little better. I was really blown away upon reread. I mean, I knew I would like it again, but this stuff was fascinating, man. It was so interesting, and I only wish it were longer, because it's only 4 volumes long. It does skip around a lot. There are like huge chunks of time that just you don't get to see, and for that, I think the series does an exceptional job showing, you know, development and events, you know, that have passed during this time in a very natural and coherent way. But, you know, I loved it though. I love the characters. I just wanted to see more of it. The series does start off a bit more episodic, you know, exploring certain ideas of what it's, you know, like living in this world. But then more conflicts arise. We follow Hachimaki's whole journey. It's just wonderful, man. The only, like, small problem I had with it is, you know, of course they tackled the whole Kessler syndrome thing. I do think the way they resolve a huge conflict involving it felt a little bit anticlimactic. It, like, kind of just stopped and then things were business as usual again. But then the ending happened and it fucking made me cry like a bitch. So, yeah. Excellent series. I gave this a 10. I still stand by it. Definitely check this one out if you are a fan of science fiction, of Yukimura, or just manga in general, because I think it's super underrated and more people need to check it out. And finally, A Silent Voice by Yoshitoki Oima. This has become quite the phenomenon since I first reviewed it, as it got a film adaptation that kind of, you know, blew the fuck up. It was one of the most probably popular anime films of the past 10 years. Oima would also go on to create another hit series, To Your Eternity, which is fantastic. But it all started here with the Silent Voice manga. The story about Shoyo, a little pissant. He's, you know, he's a real twerp, man. A 6th grader with a stick so far up his ass. When a shy deaf girl, Shoko, joins his class, he decides to bully the absolute living fuck out of her. And he gets all the other kids on it too. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. The first volume of this series is rough, man. Not that it's bad, it's just really hard to see these complete jerkwads picking on this little helpless deaf girl. And she tries so hard, man. She tries so hard to make friends and to push past it, but you know she's hurting. And the bullying gets so bad that she eventually transfers schools. And with it mostly all being Shoya's fault, this leads a lot of his peers to start resenting him and to start ignoring him or even bullying him. And this is where the series really starts. We see Shoya, who was a horrible asshole when he was a kid, but we see the repercussions of that. And man, at the start of the series, like the present day timeline here, we now follow Shoya, who's 17 years old, and he's broken, man. Because of his actions when he was a kid, the rest of his life up to this point has been completely miserable, with people alienating him, hating him, to the point where he is about to take his own life. But before he can do that, he reconnects with Shoko. And the story is basically about their friendship and Shoya's redemption, and if he can even be redeemed. Developing this relationship with Shoko leads to him, you know, making some new friends for the first time in a very long time, as well as connecting with even some old kids he knew back in elementary school. And it's really just a fascinating look at humans, how they can make mistakes, how they can change. Like, Shoya was an asshole, there's absolutely no denying it. But like most childhood bullies, he had reasons why he would do it. Not good reasons, but you can't help but feel bad for him as well. And you know, seeing him come to these realizations and his growth is just fantastic. Shoko was also a fantastic character because she has a lot of problems too. Of course, the biggest one being that she, growing up deaf, is not easy. Like, she's a very damaged person as well. And when the two meet each other again, not only are they confronting like these horrible monsters of their past, but they also find ways to overcome those, to move on. And it's really just brilliant, man. It's a fan-fucking-tastic experience. When I first reviewed it, I was the same age of these characters, and now where I'm years removed from high school, I even get more of a sense of, you know, knowing people who used to be assholes, but you know, they have since come around, because you know, it's a real thing that happens. And I thought Oima's portrayal of this whole phenomenon was just beautiful. Also, the fucking Steven Universe kid. I still find this so funny. Like, what? And the ending is just wonderful. It's all around a fucking sick-ass, beautiful. I gave this a 10, and like Planet Tess, I still think it deserves that score. It's fucking great. It's wonderful, man. Those last two series, my opinion didn't really change. I just kind of wanted to, you know, refresh everyone on what I think of them. Oh, hey, my heat finally kicked in. Well, that's good, just as I was wrapping up. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. You can leave your thoughts on these series and this video in the comments down below. But there is one more series that I still want to talk about. But there's a lot to it. In fact, it's much more than just a single manga series. So yeah, we're gonna dive pretty deep into that one, and I will see you guys then.